Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global Azure 2022 Global Stream. My name is Michiel Matev, and we will talk about Cosmos DB serverless today. As you know, Global Azure is initiative of Microsoft Azure community and Microsoft 3 days global event worldwide where different speakers will present different sessions related to Microsoft Azure. I would like to say that exceptionally this year we will have in Bulgaria in person and hybrid event which will be 1 week later because in Bulgaria we have long holidays starting from this evening. So you are welcome to join again Bulgarian edition next week, next Saturday, May 14th. But now we will talk mostly about Cosmos DB. I would like to share several more things thanks to local sponsors for my region who will support Global Azure Bulgaria. And we will talk today about specifics related to probably the most powerful multimodal polyglot database as a service. This is Microsoft Cosmos DB. Our agenda includes several things about Cosmos DB concept, what is Cosmos DB serverless, and what exactly is related to provision, throughput, and serverless concept in Cosmos DB. We will talk about estimation of expected consumption. It is directly related to the cost of specific service, in this case Cosmos DB. We will consider several use cases and will demonstrate how you can use serverless. Let's start with introduction. As I already explained, Cosmos DB is database as a service, multimodal polyglot database. What means this? You have different models with different APIs exposed for these models, and you can have in the same platform with almost the same API option to work with different models and different structure of data. We have table API, we have core SQL API, which is document-based solution. We have Graph API, we have Cassandra API, different options to apply different models. And also we have table API. Table API is pretty similar to Azure Table Storage, but kind of premium storage because you have options to have multi-indexes, different SLA, and this brings additional value for your table storage. Usually, when we talk about Cosmos DB, we have relation with NoSQL databases because Cosmos DB is mostly focused on different types of NoSQL models. It is something which is from one side specific, from another side pretty powerful because you have different types of models. You are able to use Graph API with uh, Gremlin. You are able to use Cassandra. You are able to use Table API. You are able to use document-based solutions. So uh, using the same platform with different configuration, you can have one solution for big enterprises and also for small companies. You are able to have different teams working on different parcel solutions with different models, but using the same platform with almost the same API, with the same developer experience. This is one of the main benefits of Cosmos DB. Cosmos DB has some specifics that to have optimal performance and optimal cost, you need to have some tuning. Default settings probably will not give you the best options in these two aspects, and you need to consider some specific configurations. From another hand, Cosmos DB in the past was related to provision throughput. That means you need to keep reserved some specific capacity for your databases. Nowadays, we are much more flexible and we can have Cosmos DB also with scenarios where we have unpredictable workload with pikes, and in this case, we can use Cosmos DB serverless, the main subject of this presentation. The good thing is that you will have nothing different in your experience. We will just see the small specifics related to serverless accounts and hope that you will start to like this approach and to uh, have additional values using Cosmos DB in scenarios where you need to have not so high workloads, when you have spikes, when you have limited budget. Cosmos DB is able now to cover almost all possible ranges of specific use cases. And yes, if you like it, you can use Cosmos DB almost for everything. So, as I mentioned, there are many use cases where workloads are volatile and it is not possible to have stable prediction for some longer timeline about expected workload. This is the most important in many cases in the past that needed programmatic changes of provision throughput or needed to use autopilot mode, which is another specific configuration. We will talk about this a little bit later. So the most important is to find out good option to have scalable solution on the optimal cost, and this is exactly what Cosmos DB serverless offers for you. Um, when we talk about serverless, serverless is also a term with several different meanings. From one side, serverless is a term very often related to platform components, even for Cosmos DB. Cosmos DB is a platform component where you have no need to think about infrastructure behind the stitch, and in this context, Cosmos DB is also serverless. We have serverless as concept also for computing resources like Azure functions, where you have no need to think about infrastructure and you can have your logic without to think about services on top of which you need to build your logic. But in the current case, Cosmos DB serverless means that you have actually a consumption-based model for Cosmos DB. You will pay as much as you use this service, and this is the most important, which you need to remember. Serverless in Cosmos DB is exactly related to consumption model. And billing is directly related to this because Platform services, especially in the cloud, are services using specific units for measurement. For Cosmos DB, for example, this is a request unit. You have DTU for Azure SQL databases, where you have some uh, formal KPIs which give you options to compare different tars and to compare productivity of services um, depending on what exactly you need for specific cases. Serverless mode allows to have charges only when you use Cosmos DB. In the same way, like consumption-based model, for example, for Azure functions. Just in this case, we have in this concept the same for databases. You need to consider when is reasonable to use serverless model. You have several scenarios. We will talk a little bit later. First, you need to have um, workloads which are with changes, and you can have huge advantage also if you have in these workloads timeline when your database is not used or usage is really pretty low. In this case, usually serverless options will give you much better cost opportunities than provision throughput. How exactly Cosmos DB pricing works? Probably this is something which is good to know a little bit more in details when we talk also about um, Cosmos DB serverless. When we have provision throughput, as I mentioned, reserve some specific resources for your account. You can change this. You can change this programmatically. You can change this using Azure Management Portal. The specific is that if you change this throughput in the timeline of 1 hour, for example, you will pay for the whole hour for the highest throughput, which is used for this hour. Why we need such kind of scenario? Because to change throughput behind the stage is needed to actually extend the infrastructure. It means it is needed some time to reserve more resources and after that to release it, and it is not effectively for cloud provider to have these changes related also to pricing perspective for a very small timeline. It should be reasonable to be everything cost effective for users of the platform, but also on the reasonable price and effort for the supplier of the platform. When we have um, Cosmos DB, it is possible to use free tier. Free tier is very popular for education, for some small experiments where you can have in subscription specific Azure subscription, one Cosmos DB account where you have throughput up to 1000 request units and 25 gigabyte storage for free. But it is something which, of course, is limited. One account per subscription and this limitation of the resources. So it is not possible with this really good option to cover all scenarios. And we have also another flexible option using autopilot mode. For the autopilot mode, you can have dynamically scaled throughput. It will be for the use throughput a little more expensive than for the reserved throughput, for the provision throughput with specific fixed um, value, but from another hand will give you flexibility. Again, autopilot mode is not serverless. Autopilot mode allow you to scale without additional external logic, mm, without to need to add programmatically some effort or to manage this using management portal or some other tools related to platform engineering. Let's go a little more deeper into Cosmos DB serverless. When we have Cosmos DB serverless, from one side, good option is that you pay exactly what you use. So no usage of Cosmos DB, no payment for Cosmos DB. Um, there are some specific limitations for now. You can have only one region. It is not possible to have multi-region deployment for specific for database of specific account. If you created account on serverless mode, here probably I missed to mention that serverless mode is set on the Cosmos DB account level. You can have many accounts in your subscription, but when you create Cosmos DB account, this is actually logical container related to several settings. One of the settings is related to model of the database. That means what kind of API you will use, Core SQL API, Table API, um, Graph API, whatever. Second is related to your throughput, if throughput will be provisioned or serverless. And related to this, you have also possible options for multi-region deployment, especially for um, accounts where you have provision throughput. It is possible to have also zone availability. That means in the same region to have several zones, not dependent one from another, but in the same region. And you can have deployment in several zones to have zone availability for your Azure Serverless account and for your Azure account with provision throughput. To summarize, zone availability is available for Cosmos DB serverless in the same way like for Cosmos DB with provision throughput. But multi-region support, multi-region deployment is not supported at this moment. And also, when you have this flexible throughput, you have a limit for containers. It is not possible to have more than 5,000 request units on the container level like throughput, and it is not possible to have more storage than 50 gigabyte at specific container. Um, this is limitation which you need to consider. You can have many containers, and if you have value to use Cosmos DB serverless, you need also to design your Cosmos DB databases on the logical level with specific containers in a way where to fit in these limitations. It is not possible later also to add additional regions to serverless account if you create it. And yes, serverless containers will not allow to add on the later stage server provision throughput. That means if you create Cosmos DB account on the serverless level, it will be always serverless for any container in this account. This is the most important. If you have load which is above the expected, you will have throttling and you will receive error. You are not able to make any changes in the containers if you try to do regarding to throughput, and if you try to do this using API, you will receive error in the same way like if you overload your containers. So these are the most important details related to serverless. Let's now compare several things. Probably the most important, what we have exactly in provisioned throughput and when we have serverless mode. In provisioned throughput, usually we have predictable workload and in this context performance. For huge workloads, it is also important to use provision throughput, because if your workload stay very high, serverless mode will stay less effective and less cost efficient. If you have variations in the load, or your workloads are not very high loaded, serverless mode is much better. You actually consider request units when you use provision throughput. If you are using serverless mode, it is up to consumption, but consider limitations on the container level, that you should not overload specific container regarding to request units. About geo-distribution, it is already discussed. We cannot make multi-deployment for serverless. We have limit on the container level about size, and latency is something which also is used as specific KPI. For less than 10 milli for provision throughput, we can expect to have SLA, service level agreement, and to expect less than 10 milliseconds regarding to this service level agreement like latency. When we have serverless mode, we have not service level agreement because we have also not multi-region deployment, we have service level objective, and we have uh, slightly higher latency, which is actually not so strong guaranteed. And billing model is based on consumption for serverless. Let's provide several samples. Sample one, we have workload where we have maximum 500 request units per second, and we have around 20 million request units load per month. If we have provisioned throughput, approximately the cost will be 29, 30 bucks. If we have serverless mode, the price is paid by million request units per month. And of course, you need to keep these limitations for container, which we discussed. Final price will be around $5. So we have nearly 6 times more less uh, cost for serverless mode. But if we have workload where monthly load is expected to be around, for example, 250 million request units, then you see that in serverless mode, you will have more than 2 times higher price for serverless mode. So for very high loads, you need to consider that this price is higher. Let's have overview of use cases when we have Cosmos DB serverless. Cosmos DB serverless can be used for education, development, experiments, applications which have not predictable traffic, uh, low ratio average to peak. That means peaks are not so many, probably less than 10% of the whole time. We can have using Cosmos DB serverless implementation for internal company systems, also back office for such kind of solutions. Uh, Usage of provision throughput often is more expensive that is reasonable, but using serverless, you can have really good numbers regarding to the price. So this is the most important. And when we have creation of instance, we need to remember a few things. Serverless option on the account level, availability zones in the only option for high availability. And let's see now with demos how everything works. I will try to demonstrate now using sample account how it works. I already created one sample Cosmos DB account, but I will demonstrate how you can start from the beginning, and after that we will see comparable options regarding to performance using two different modes, serverless and provision throughput. And you can see that if load is not very high, these numbers are quite similar. So imagine that, for example, we need to create, doesn't matter, core SQL. You need to find some resource group or to create new one. And you can choose here serverless or provision throughput. If you create serverless, yes, we need to add unique name. Kind of account. That was the reason to have some missings. Let's try to check again. Okay. For example, if you have past validation, you can create this account. I already have created account. This account is empty, and I will make comparison between two applications. Application which works with table API, related to Cosmos DB with provision throughput. I have here sample database related to this, and we have in this database actually no data at the moment, and the same database in serverless mode. So let's first start our test using provision throughput. I will change the size to be possible easier to see numbers. We have several operations. We have inserts, retrieves, query against secondary index in Cosmos DB, table API, update, and we need to have delete. Of course, depending on current situation of the platform, because Azure, as other cloud platforms, provides remote services. You have time for transportation. You have some time related to also possible load of the existing services. For example, if there is huge global event, probably some services also will be more loaded. These numbers are difficult for comparison. Need to have many runs to have good statistics for this. But now I'm trying to provide just some possible options. So now we are running in serverless mode. Um, Again, this is something which need to be done many times to build a good model. Now, at the moment, this performance can be um, even on the momentum slightly different than normal. And also regions are important. If you have regions which are close to your location with good connectivity, of course, you will have much better numbers. If you use this against remote regions in another continent, you will have additional latency. So at this moment, we see that actually what we have in serverless mode is a little bit slower because of current usage of Azure resources for different demonstrations. I needed to create for serverless mode the database in another region. This is additional impact, but in general, what I can share is that we have slightly slower performance from serverless mode database. Again, if you have high load test with many inserts, many updates, you can see this, but otherwise, such kind of options will be probably quite comparable. So, this is most important that I wanted to share with you. And if you have any questions, you can ask me anytime now using the chat or later using social platforms and via email. I will be glad to help you if you want to discuss more details related to effectiveness using Cosmos DB serverless and to start experiment and to start using in your practice. Thank you very much for the attention and enjoy the conference.